We are ready to begin our Emerging Safety Trends panel. I'd like to take this time to introduce our moderator, Thomas Archer. Thomas?
Well, thank you, Kelly. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Pretty excited actually to be moderating the panel today. And if I hadn't known, Kelly, that you were going to be talking about putting on a disguise and wearing wigs, although I don't think I've ever worn a wig, I might have put on a mustache or at least tried to grow one, which I'm not really good at, but would have at least given it a shot. But thanks. I am, like I said, pretty excited to be moderating this panel. Over my career, I've had the opportunity to attend lots of different conferences, and I've also had the opportunity to moderate or sit on lots of different panels. This is probably the first time for me moderating or even attending a panel digitally, so it'll be kind of a bit of a new experience, I think, for me and maybe some other folks too. So, but I'm excited, and one of the things that I always love, attending conferences and being part of these things is much like the safety community and the construction industry. I think it was Henry Ford, he said something like, coming together is a beginning, staying together is progress, and working together is success. And I think when we have these type of conferences, we get an opportunity to share, and we are basically part of the knowledge economy in safety and in leadership. And part of this was, could I reflect a little bit on leadership and what leadership might mean to me and to us as the folks on this panel. And one of the things I guess that kind of comes to mind is, in my past life, I've kind of gone through leadership development with companies I've worked for, some education, but really what stands out and what probably drives it is practice and taking the time to actually practice the skill in terms of being a leader. But another thing that I guess an old employer of mine in Ontario told me a long time ago was when they were bringing me through sort of a leadership program was great leaders don't typically set out to be leaders. They set out to make a difference. And I think that's, in terms of our safety community and our construction industry, I think that's a big statement in itself. I think folks who team to get into safety and want to be leaders within the safety community tend to be people who want to make a difference. And I think that's that passion and that drive is something that drives conferences like this, and it drives panels like this and the discussions we're going to have today. So like I said, I'm very excited to be able to sort of moderate this panel. And today we're going to talk about emerging safety trends. So when I was asked to do this, I said, wow, that's a really broad topic, but it's a really exciting topic as well. And the first thing that comes to my mind, and probably because I was recently sort of in the tech sector before coming back to the organization, was I started to think about digital trends. And in the opening remarks, Councillor Tarina had basically mentioned a lot of the stuff that SCSA has done in terms of digital innovation and innovation as in general. But some of the things I think about when I think about emerging safety trends, the first thing that comes to mind for me is things like the digital trends, like Internet of Things, connected devices, automated communication, wearables, that sort of thing. Some things that even we're exploring right now, VR and augmented reality, things that can actually help mitigate risk in training environments for safety. Things like 3D modeling. The construction industry has been using 3D modeling in different ways for years through CAD drawings and that, by using it within virtual reality and being able to walk through sites. Another thing too is mobile safety management systems. There's a lot of different apps. I mean, we have apps as well that we have for the SCSA and for our members. But there's things that are coming out that are really broad and wide in terms of trends in safety, but also not just the digital trends. I also think about things like, with COVID, for instance. I know this is a big conversation and topic, but some of the things that come to mind just within the last year or so are, trends around respirators, social distancing, for instance, mental health, and even remote work. So there's quite a few different trends in emerging safety that we can talk about and we can hopefully explore as we go through this conversation. And this morning, I'm not sure, we are joined currently by Errol Fisher and by John Desjarlais. And I think if we're lucky, Mike McKenna from our sister association in BC will also probably be joining us, I hope. But right at the bat, Errol is the VP of Operations for Northridge Developments. Welcome, Errol. And John Desjarlais is the General Manager for the Great Plains Contracting. Thank you, and welcome to the panel, folks. I guess maybe we'll start off with a little bit of a quick warm-up question. the conference is based around leadership and leadership and safety. And many people become interested in leadership or safety because of a personal story. So maybe we'll start with Errol and then move on to John. But do you have a personal story you'd like to kind of tell the attendees and the participants here about, I guess, your path into leadership and safety?
Well, I guess that our path, when I say that, Northridge, and then in particular, my path started, we were the first residential company to get core certified. And that was the leadership that was shown by the ownership of this company. And he had a buddy who owned a company, and there was a fatality with this other company. And he said, I never want that to happen to my people. So we started down the road to get our core certification. And it was a 4 to 5 year journey that we went on. And my predecessor as the VP of construction started that. And he was on the SCSA board also. And then I took his place both on the board and as the VP of construction. And in that, when I took that, I said, okay, we've been doing this. We've been working at this hard. We've got 1 year. We want to finish this. So we became core certified within a year of me starting in that position. Now, he had done a lot of the groundwork, most of the groundwork. It was a tough go because we were like pioneers in the residential construction industry to get people to start following safety practices. When I started as my own company back, I think you said in 1981, framing company, safety didn't exist in our world. It really different. No hard hats, no steel-toed boots, no fall protection for sure. And my real first experience with safety was my dad came to work for me for a little while. It could have been a layoff. He worked at the potash mine, and he shows up with a hard hat and safety boots. He says, where's your guys' safety boots and your hard hats? And I said, we don't have to wear that. That's a pretty goofy answer. So it was a whole lot of years, and I'll tell you a few more stories about some old war stories about what went on back in the old days. But that's kind of where it started. And I think that's where everything has to start. Like I said, when the owner of this company, Wally Ma started down that road, that was the beginning, really the real beginning of my taste of really adopting safety in everything we do.
Well, thanks, Errol. Yeah, I think there's probably many stories too that probably lots of us can share now that some of us are getting older about, starting off in construction. And I worked in construction many years ago too, and had very similar experiences. And although I had safety boots, anything like a hard hat or above safety boots was kind of new to a lot of folks, it seemed. But unless you were an industrial commercial, but I know working in residential, when I first started off in that, it was very minimum. However, things have moved a long ways, and with folks like yourselves and the people that work with SCSA, we've moved the dial quite a bit. So really appreciate that. And John, how about yourself? Do you have any stories in terms of leadership and moving into that path that you can inspire hopefully some folks?
Yeah, for sure. My path was, I guess, my involvement with safety was certainly more formal right from the get-go. And so I spent a majority of my working experience in industrial, in mining actually, and milling. And so my first job was as a radiation safety technician. And so, I had I guess a formal orientation to safety, safety management, safety program. And getting invested, and then through that, getting exposed to, industrial fire and rescue and things like that. And so there was a lot of formal aspects, I think, to my involvement with safety management, safety applications. So through that, as a professional or a technician in the field, doing inspections, quality checks, air quality checks, equipment inspections, things like that. And so I guess in a way I was really fortunate because I got to start right into that side, in terms of compliance or regulatory performance. We were in a highly regulated industry already, being nuclear. And so the layers and the expectations around quality management systems around safety was pretty high. So from that perspective, I got an appreciation for the structure, but it was eventually that, I got I think a deeper appreciation of culture and performance. And so I think that in a way it put a little bit of a blinder on me where I jumped right into a heavy structure. of safety management, and then learned eventually kind of I think the more important performance and culture side, the softer side of safety management and things like that. And so through my experience there, again, just started evolving my understanding of continual improvement through safety management. But yeah, experience even prior to that, I grew up in northern Saskatchewan. And so, safety was always, I think, inherent. We didn't really necessarily talk about it, but some of the things we did see was, firearm safety and residential construction, things like that. We didn't talk much, like Errol mentioned, like we never talked about, steel toe boots or hard hats or gloves for that matter. It was just kind of, get the tools that you need to get the job done and get it done. So I've seen the evolution. It's been incredible. We're talking a lot more about performance and culture, which is great, because we want to go past, simple reacting to safety activities to more be preventative. So it's cool.
Awesome. Thanks, John. That's awesome experience. Well, since we're kind of talking about sort of emerging safety trends and sort of experiences that we've all had and from the different sectors we've been in, I just kind of wanted to ask, what do you guys see, I guess maybe within your roles or maybe as a personal passion piece as well, sort of, what do you see in terms of emerging trends? I know kind of talked a little bit beginning a little bit about, there's digital trends and then there's trends within safety and culture and everything in between. And like I said, it's a fairly broad subject, but maybe what are you guys passionate about, or maybe what types of emerging trends do you guys see within your sectors of the industry that maybe we can share with the audience? And I believe, just as another thing, I believe the audience can also maybe add some comments in the chat too if they wish to ask some questions or follow-up questions. We can probably take a look at those too. There's some questions we want to ask the panel, but just to make sure we also capture the audience. I think Mike is now joining us. So, but we'll start off with this question, and Mike, I'll tell your bio in a second to the audience. But the question I just asked the panel, which kind of hopefully people will be interested in hearing, is sort of what sort of passion pieces and what sort of emerging trends do you guys see coming up in construction and construction safety that either you're passionate about or that your companies are taking on, or things that you are seeing? So I'll just kind of leave it at that and maybe start with John, seeing as you're right up on my screen right now.
For sure, absolutely, Thomas. So I think one of the things we're certainly seeing, especially even with, and I think even more so through COVID, is, the aspects of mental health, right? And so I think we're seeing a little bit past physical health and physical health indicators, physical safety indicators. And we're starting to think more about mental health. And then I think, and it's an important discussion, and it's a discussion I want to participate, help support and facilitate, and to see advance. And so, as we understand aspects around quality, aspects around productivity, and I think we need to understand how that kind of the mental health and well-being influence, and how they are at, some of the roots of some of the incidents we see. We typically don't explore root causes in that way, and we say human performance, right, or things like that. And so, but yeah, starting to understand some of those challenges around that. And that's certainly one of the trends I think that COVID-19 has really elevated. We're really thinking about that. We're asking people to step back. We're asking people to think about their well-being, because we're forced to work in different ways. In industrial, there's of course added layers on there with distancing, masks, and things like that. Our industry responds pretty quickly to things like that, the changes around, safety, physical safety, but the mental well-being aspect to it is something I think we're really starting to understand. We're watching trends in terms of incidents and incident rates and things like that, and then starting to understand how does, that type of engagement around mental health and well-being influence a lot of those safety factors, and could potentially be leading indicators in terms of, bigger incidents down the road, or preventing bigger incidents down the road.
Awesome, thanks. And I guess maybe we'll move on to Errol too. And if anyone has comments in regards to what the panelists are saying too. Charlotte actually mentioned in the chat that she's passionate about safety training and in the field directly on-site training. So just wanted to bring that up too. Thanks for that comment. And Errol, just before we go down to Mike, what are you guys seeing, and what sort of things are you passionate about?
Well, you're going to hear a lot about mental health, I think, and John covered that really well, but I found a quote about mental health, and I'll deal with some other stuff too, but it's health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and the workplace has the power to nurture it or impair it. I thought that covered it really well, because that you're seeing that more and more, and right, John's right, COVID kind of brought that on, but some of the emerging trends I see is that, and one of the things is green technologies are now introducing new jobs, which will now need new safety procedures. You can now build a 6-story wood frame building and even taller than that. And it's usually not the industrial guys that are used to the safety of the commercial guys. It's now the residential framers that are going to be building these buildings. And now they have to deal with even higher heights. We're also seeing renovations really taking off, and a lot of homeowners are doing their own renovations, and they're the prime contractor. So I see an emerging trend is we need to get the public more awareness of safety and the consequences of not addressing safety issues. And then automation. You can get robots that lay bricks for you now. You can get a 3D life-size printer that can build you a house out of concrete. So there's a whole bunch of things that are changing, and there's going to be some jobs that are eliminated, but then new jobs will be created. And like I said, now we're going to have to come up with new safety procedures. Thanks, Thomas.
Oh, this year I've seen quite a few of those videos on houses being built with basically with robots and concrete just being poured. It's kind of interesting, and definitely is an emerging trend, and something I think that we have to be on top of in terms of looking at safety and the new technologies that and new products that not just in safety but also in the application of building products as well. So I think that's good. Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to quickly introduce Mike McKenna here. Mike is the Executive Director of the BC Construction Safety Alliance. So welcome and thanks for joining us. And same question to you. What sort of, I guess, from maybe you're being a different perspective, being on the coast and working in a little bit in the occupational therapy realm in your past, what sort of, I guess, emerging trends do you see coming up in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years, or currently that you guys are maybe passionate about or that the organizations are working on?
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Thomas, and good morning, everybody. I would echo what John and Errol have said, particularly around mental health. I just want to give you a couple of stats here, which I think are really important to kind of contextualize how important it is for us to really take this seriously as an industry. So suicide in BC, if you work in the construction sector, you're 7 times more likely to commit suicide than the average. 55% of all opioid deaths are related to people in the construction sector. Works APC has seen a 25% increase in mental health related claims. And finally, and I think what's most important for us as a group to realize is that only 23% of Canadians feel like they can talk about this stuff. And I would suggest that in construction, where the old adage that we yell because we love you is still alive and well, is something that I think we need to consider, because we don't talk about these things generally as construction people. And I think as safety folks, safety professionals, that's something that we're going to have to hone our skills on, how we get people to open up in ways that are useful and ways that are going to keep them working. We continually as an industry seem to be struggling to get qualified tradespeople, anybody in the industry. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we do all that we can to keep those that we've already trained, that are already skilled at their jobs, that already understand the environment that they work in, that we do all that we can to keep them there. And I think just generally and notionally, it's important for us to look after each other. And so I would echo what Errol and John have said there, but I would also suggest that one thing that resonates with us out here on the coast, and I think this is typical of the construction sector, nationally, is that our mantra is making safety simpler. Not simple, because it's not, but simpler. And when we look at an industry that, and I think this is replicated within your province as well, where 97% of the contractors have 20 or less employees, 95% have 10 or less, and 92% have 5 or less employees. It's an industry of small employers. And so I sat at a table once, and around the table were representatives from large general primes like Ledcor and PCL, some mid-sized trade guys, and some really small trades guys. And they were all part of the same association. I asked them, I said, why are you all here together? Like, what binds you here? And they said, half joking, that they're all 2 jobs away from bankruptcy. And so for me, that underscored that no one goes to work in the morning as an owner or as a worker intending to hurt anybody. I think we all have the best interests of our employees at hand, but we've got to make the access to safety when someone's worried about paying their mortgage, getting the next job, making sure supplies are delivered on time, all those things that are rolling around in people's heads throughout the day. It's really important that we make safety a priority, but make it a priority in a really simple way, if possible.
Well said. Thank you for that. I know as we look sort of towards advancing the field of construction safety and management, we talked a little bit about culture too, and some of this. I guess, what are your guys' thoughts in terms of the attitude towards safety in construction? Do you feel we are advancing, or are there ways that we think we can advance, maybe perhaps in the field of construction safety and management and the attitudes towards safety? We can start with, I'll start with Errol this time.
Yeah, it's, and I said this before, like the advancement of it comes, if you don't have the support from the leadership, it's the safety program is not going to work. And it has to become the culture of the company. You can't do it just because you have to. You have to do it for the right reasons. And good owners realize that their most important asset is their people. And you quickly find that out when you lose some of those important people for whatever reason. And even COVID, we found that, we lost a couple of people. We didn't lose them. Sorry, that's a bad way to say it. We temporarily had them not at work. And you quickly realize that how important it is to have the people. And even when people started to work remotely, the interaction from person to person, it's not the same. You do adapt, you do get better at it, but it's got to be right from the top down, and then it can't even skip a level of the company. It's got to be right through, so that you can't show up on a work site, for instance, if you're the VP of construction without your steel-toed boots and your hard hat, just because you're popping in for 5 minutes. You got to make that effort to show, so that everybody on that company realizes that safety is important all the time.
Thanks. I don't know if John, Mike, if you guys have any comments too that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, sure. So I think, construction, it's certainly one of the areas where, we're challenged with a lot of, I think, things such as like toxic masculinity and some of the conditions of, machoism and stuff like that. I think, they certainly still exist. I see them changing. And I think that's a reflection of leadership too, in terms of leadership evolving and their expectations of their workforce. One of the things that certainly needs to be important as we work with our teams and we work with our people is they need to understand, or we need to demonstrate that we prioritize safety. We really do over productivity, right? And I mean, if you prioritize safety, productivity will come, engagement will come. In those aspects, and so never compromising on or cutting corners on programs or operational aspects of safety for the purpose of performing in that area. And so it'll always impact you one way or the other. We think we can take corners and stuff like that, but I think with leaders recognizing that's really important. That safety is really important, and keep promoting it and supporting it in that way. Through some of the things we've seen, we talk about mental health, but I mean issues of harassment, right? And starting to set clear expectations on what behaviors we expect, right? And what behaviors we will not tolerate as they relate to workplace engagement, as such, workplace health, and then thus productivity. But I see things changing. More and more people are talking about it. It's really important. More and more people are feeling more comfortable and then embracing that safety really is, paramount in a lot of places. And then as such, seeing things in terms of, performance indicators where people are more engaged or more productive, and we're seeing potentially, less incidents and less serious incidents, and more reporting, more engagement, and more engagement activities. So.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm going to jump to you, Mike, here as well, but I'm going to sort of mix it up with something you mentioned as well in terms of this question is, we're looking at advancing, construction safety and attitude towards, which is maybe a little bit touched on culture as well. One of the things too, as you mentioned, is the sort of the makeup of the industry in your province, and it's very similar in ours too. With a lot of companies we have 8 to 10,000 companies depending on the year, and they all range from small to mid-size is probably the bulk of. But a lot of times what we hear, and this is again reflecting on attitudes towards leadership and safety, is small companies often feel they can't afford safety, or sometimes we hear that sort of discussion going on. Is there a way, in terms of emerging trends and attitudes, is there ways that maybe we can make it simple and affordable?
That's a great point, and I think one that if we don't consider it as safety people or people interested in safety, we don't consider it at our peril, because we're all trying to be heard, right? And in a world like construction where things are happening all the time, work sites are not static. The provision of safety becomes increasingly more and more difficult. And to your point again, there's a lot of small employers, and they got into business because they're good at something. They're good at building houses, or they're good at laying pipe, or they're good at doing electrical work. They didn't consider the fact that safety would be something that they would have to think about as well. So we've thought about this a lot over the past decade, because how do you get your message above all the other messages that everybody else is trying to push down folks' throats? And that's probably a negative way to put it, but so we tried to get into the head of the average contractor. And what are they trying to do? They're trying to make money, they're trying to save money, and they're trying to protect the money they have. And so if you realize as a safety professional, those three key things, that no one goes into business to lose money, no one goes into business to have their money taken away, and people want to save their money, then how can you, from a safety perspective, enhance those three principles? And we were cautious about this because it sounds a bit too capitalistic, but at the same time, there's only two ways to reduce your WCB premiums or your safety costs. That's either you prevent injuries, or the injuries that do happen, because inevitably injuries happen. You want to make them as less serious as possible, because then people aren't off work for a long time. And even more importantly, they're not injured. They're not severely injured. No one wants to see anybody get hurt. And so I think as safety folks, if you really want to get in the head of a business owner, telling them, look, I can help you save, protect, and make money by decreasing the financial and human costs associated with injury, you've now opened the door, right? And then, at least you've got someone's attention. At least they know you understand them. And so I don't think profit's not a dirty word. And you can be profitable and keep people safe. So I think that's really key.
Awesome, thanks. I don't know if any of the other panelists too want to jump in on that, and if they have any advice for maybe some of the smaller companies as well, as how they can, within the changing attitudes and culture, how they might be able to make safety a bit more, or at least the concept of safety and leadership around it, more affordable and simple.
Can I actually add just one more thing?
Oh, yeah.
I know you folks have the NCSO program, and we have the NCSO program here as well. And what's really nice about that program is, if you're a small contractor with 4, 5, 16, 17 guys and girls working for you, you want everybody being productive. So you can't afford to have somebody only doing safety. It's just not feasible. But with the NCSO program, you can have one of your productive tradespeople, one of your laborers, whoever you choose to tap on the shoulder, can take all those courses, can demonstrate the experience that they have within the construction sector. So you've just now made your company safer, but you haven't increased your costs per se. You haven't had to hire anybody new. And then if you've got someone who works for you who's drinking the Kool-Aid, has got the NCSO designation, sees the value in it, that's really great. And then the NHSA program, I'm not sure if you guys have that. We have, all it is the NCSO program without 3 years of experience. So if you've got someone in the office who does all your injury management paperwork, your WCB stuff, they never get credit for the education that they've got around safety. Well, now they can. So I think those are two ways that small contractors can make themselves safer without having to incur a bunch of extra costs.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks for the program plug too, by the way. NCSO was a great program. Also want to just comment to you, like, I think in Canada, drinking the Kool-Aid's got to be changed to like drinking the Timmies or something like that. So,
Starbucks.
But seems to fit better. I don't know, folks, again, if John or Errol, if you had any comments you wanted to tag onto that too, certainly welcome to.
Yeah, I'll just add a quick comment to that. I think that's a great point of discussion, right? And so we're engaged in the activity of construction because, we all seek to make money, profit, right? And absolutely. And I think the narrative, like, and Mike mentioned some excellent points there, the narrative around safety as a cost of business, I think we need to talk about that differently. I think safety is an investment, right? And so it's an investment ensuring our business remains profitable, sustainable, ensure that our people are engaged, productive, happy. And so I think one of the things, if we embrace it in that way, we stop thinking about it that way, we and then kind of think about the long game in terms of, how we engage in business and business operations. It certainly helps. It helps looking at it and looking at those costs more as investments. It makes it easier. And then we don't necessarily cut those corners, right? We don't necessarily cut those items that are, important, potentially life-saving. So I think that's it's a worthwhile point, thinking about profit and thinking about business and safety as an investment.
Great. And Errol, I'm not sure if you had any comments too, or if there's in around that same topic, if there's sort of emerging trends or thoughts on leadership around that sort of fit.
I'll do a quick one about that, because we had that discussion here at our ownership table, and it was, okay, so what do we get out of core? And what's the cost of core? Well, the answer, there was a couple quick answers, and it really put the discussion to sleep really quickly. And one is the cost of core, by the way, once you have it, it's pretty easy to maintain. It doesn't take a heck of a lot of work. And now, we've got an app, so we don't have to carry around paper. You've always got everything you need is right there on that app. Toolbox meetings, hazard assessments, whatever the heck you want to do. So, and then the question was asked, well, do we get a rebate because we're core certified? Now, it's been done in other provinces. It hasn't worked that well. I said, well, we don't directly get one, but overall, it's shown that because of companies get core certified, the costs for our B-rate code go down. So yeah, we do get a rebate. And then there's the other part of that where the employees, and this goes to the mental health sort of thing too. Your employees know that you have a safety program, a real certified safety program. That means you care about your employees. And that's kind of one of those priceless things.
Awesome, thanks. And again, thanks again for another program plug too, as well. Appreciate that. Just to sort of maybe merge back into sort of some of those emerging trends in safety. Someone kind of mentioned on the comments here that if you attended last week's, Wayne Morskit sort of mentioned that they're seeing more cameras and technology on site to monitor activities and safety, which is a change for a lot of workplaces. And I just wanted to get you guys' thoughts in terms of that and sort of those emerging trends and what sort of I guess direction those might be taking safety, especially in construction, and I guess it leads into the technology, but also the monitoring of safety and supervision, et cetera. So I just kind of want to maybe get your thoughts. And Errol, you're up on my screen now, so if you want to go first on that.
Well, we actually have cameras on a few of our sites, and it's come in very handy. I can check, I can go in the morning, see what's happening. I could also see if someone's doing something unsafe, and that's happened. I see a guy up on a roof and he's not tied off. Call the site foreman, he gets out there. But in residential, we don't always have one of our company people on the site. We can't possibly do that because we could be doing 60 different sites in the city at one time with the different things that we're doing. Now, I can see, and I think, Thomas, we talked about this, drones. Drones are going to come in very handy, I think, for inspections, especially at heights, but drones will also come in handy for occupational health and safety officers, I think. And that's a good thing. We've been pushing WCB to hire more occupational health safety officers, because the more people get educated out there, and it's like seatbelt law came along. Until the seatbelt law came along, people didn't wear their seatbelt. So it's got to be enforced more. And I think everybody will then become safer, costs will go down. And is it an invasion of privacy? I don't think so, because it's keeping the world safer. So I see drones being a huge thing moving into the future.
And do you see the drones pretty much being used, within the safety side of things? Is it more for monitoring? I know a lot of companies have been using drones to sort of monitor progress in the construction and the build phases, and document those too in that way. Do you think it fits in well with safety as well?
I think it does. And actually a drone is easier to use in some cases, because to set up cameras, you need power, you need internet. With a drone, you don't need any of that stuff. So I think drones will overtake the cameras.
And fun to fly too, if you get the opportunities.
I would say as well, we're in the business of mitigating risk. And I think drones can play a big part in that. Errol mentioned using them for sort of at height inspections. I think here I can think of, if you're inspecting a crane, those are huge pieces of machinery. They're very tall. Rather than having a human walk out on the end of that jib, you've got a drone now. I can think of confined spaces, rather than sending someone into a confined space. I mean, we do what we can to again mitigate risk around entering those types of environments. But if we can send a drone in that's got a camera attached and can do a pre-inspection before the human gets involved, or if you inspect that crane and you see there are no issues, you don't have to send anybody up. I mean, you've just said that's the best way to prevent an accident, is just not have somebody do the task in the first place. I mean, people often joke, you could be completely safe as a construction company by just not doing any construction. Well, if you can remove that risk of getting up on a crane, to use that example again, yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it's the way of the future as the prices come down and the quality goes up. But it's not uncommon now for prime contractors to have someone on site who's like a drone expert, and not so much around safety, but around BIM and planning and mapping, etc. So I think that will be a big part of the future for sure.
Yeah, and speaking of drones too, I noticed just the other day, I think it's SAS Polytech here in the province also just started a whole new drone piloting program as well. And because there's another element of safety I think we have to look at too when we talk about operating drones in and around different environments. And John, maybe in the same theme and same vein, within terms of looking at how we look at sites and technology and cameras, are there things that maybe you guys are doing within your sector and your company that are using technology to make as emerging trends and maybe make things safer, or that's the way you're leading to be?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just to add a little bit to what was being said, that type of technology is certainly being used in terms of, quality and in inspections. We don't have to put people necessarily on heights or at risk anymore. And so there's a huge safety aspect to it. And then, of course, they increase the and then the quality of inspections we can influence. We could do more of them, right? And so without taking that risk. So there's certainly, you know, we're seeing a lot more of that in industry where that type of technology is being used. The other thing we're seeing quite a bit more is, you know, in general, the acumen of the industry in terms of technical or digital competence is increasing. So we're getting more and more people becoming more and more comfortable with technology. So we're starting to see a digitation of what we saw, you know, a lot of times on paper. For the most part, it's starting to move through analytics at first. And so how people, you know, see that information, how they disseminate it, we're starting to see performance information in real time, much more quicker, because much more people are more comfortable inputting that data and then using digital technology, you know, to manage forms, FLRAs, inspections, and things like that. And so still a lot of forms and papers out there, but we're starting to see more as costs of technology come down and they become much more robust and people become more comfortable with them, seeing the, you know, the opportunity and the savings through that, right? And so we're seeing huge movement in the digitization of, the manual prospects, right? And so things like, you know, we had physical places where there's safety manuals. It's always there, it's always there. We still have that, but much more of the workforce is understanding that they can access that information digitally. And so, and being able to do so. And so what that does is it keeps people, I think, you know, where they won't take the chance. I don't want to go to the, you know, the lunchroom and have a look at that. I think I know what it means, but now people could just check that information right there in real time, you know, for the sake of efficiency. And we're seeing people exploring that more and more and more.
That's great.
You know, I can also add, out here in British Columbia, we're using technology to do some things that were traditionally quite, you know, onerous to do. So I know Colin Poular and I have talked about this silica tool, and the silica tool was a tool that was built in conjunction with our regulator. And what it allows contractors to do is if they're going to be undertaking an activity that produces silica, and silica behind water, I believe, is the most heavily used substance by human beings on the planet. It's in concrete, and in China in the past 20 years, they've poured more concrete than they have in North America in the past 100. So there's a lot of concrete out there. And every time you disturb it, cut it, you're actually putting crystalline silica into the air. So there's a big problem here, and our regulators started to pay attention to it about 6 or 7 years ago. And what they suggested was that contractors could, rather than have an occupational hygienist come on site to do sampling for every time they disturbed concrete, that they could reference already existing scientific material. And so what we did is we incorporated all that material into a handheld app, and the contractor now on site can input what type of activity they're doing. They can input the tool that they're using, and then they can input how long they're going to be doing the activity for. And the tool will actually produce an exposure control plan that's acceptable to our regulator. And so that's a great use of technology because, again, it's simple, it's easy to access. And at the end of the day, you know, we have 52,000 contractors here, and it's impossible for an expectorate of about 150 to 200 occupational safety officers who work for WorkSafe BC to visit all those folks. And so now we know, because we look at the stats, we look at the usage stats, that we're seeing that contractors who probably never would have bothered testing because they're never going to get visited, sometimes they don't even know it's a problem, they can now produce information that's going to help protect their workers in a really simplistic way because of that advance on the technological front.
Thanks. So that's great. We have probably about 8 minutes or so left before we have to end the panel. So I'm going to maybe shift into just a little bit of a different question, somewhat related though, of course. And, you know, thinking about resources and emerging trends and sort of how do we find out where the best ideas are coming from? Where do you guys find your inspiration? Where do you guys find information and resources about some of these emerging trends? So maybe we'll, you know, maybe we can sort of start to wind us down in terms of giving some folks in the audience maybe some thoughts about how you keep on top of emerging trends in terms of leadership and safety. So Mike, maybe I'll give you the floor, seeing as you're right up there.
Yeah, It's really important that we always keep our eye on where's the holes in the market. And I think that some of the things that we would do well to think about, and COVID has taught us this, that the industry really likes online training. We didn't do much of it prior to COVID, frankly, and we had to pivot quickly to put almost all of our courses that we traditionally did in a classroom in an online format. And our numbers have never been better in terms of people taking the course. And we live in a large country, and most of the population lives on the 49th parallel. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people who need services who live in the northern halves of our provinces. And for them to take time out of their day to drive 2, 3, 4, 5 hours to a center where they could sit in a classroom, it becomes prohibitive for them to participate in safety. So I think that, we saw that there was a hole in the market there. And I think as safety people, we need to keep looking where is their need? Because where there's need, there's going to be interest. And I think the other thing, working collaboratively with our regulators can be very helpful, because I find that regulators tend to have the best data. And so we will routinely work with them annually to say, okay, what are the risks that we should be focusing on? So ladder safety is one that keeps coming up year after year after year. And I think for us to be able to be as specific as possible about what it is about ladder safety that needs to be addressed, because general programs around be careful on the ladder, we've all heard them. But if we can look at the data and we can determine, just to make the point, that at 5 o'clock on Fridays, males 18 to 22 tend to fall off a roof when they transfer from the top rung onto the roof. Now we got something that we as safety people can do something with, because we can target that messaging around. We need to let industry know to be particularly vigilant at 5 p.m. on a Friday if you've got an 18 to 22-year-old male on a ladder. So I think those are two things I think that are really important. One is always looking for the holes, being creative, and also letting the data guide us, because data doesn't lie.
That's great, thank you. And John, maybe we'll jump to you next, and just, for folks out there, where might be great resources for people to kind of look at in terms of seeking and finding those emerging trends and finding ways to adapt to it. If you have any comments that maybe you utilize, or.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to have a process in how you do that, right? How you look for things like that. And so, a good risk management process is really important. And through that, how you look and seek for trends, right? That's part of a good risk management process, so that you can identify those risks even before they become real and more than just simply perceived risks. And so I think that's really important, establishing a process like that. And so then there's some formality in terms of frequencies, identifying sources and things like that. That's really important. But as individuals, so that's organizationally, as individuals, get involved, participate. And so I didn't hesitate to participate on SCSA's organization through the board of directors, but regionally through your regional associations and through the different committees and things like that, because people are dealing with all sorts of things all over the place. And I found my participation across these associations and organizations, not just in these, but across industry and across national other organizations. People are experiencing different things and picking up on different things. And so it's exposed me to what's happening, I guess, all over the place. And so that's really important for individuals. Participate out there, right? And so get out there, talk to some different people and seeing what's going on in different areas. And some of that stuff could relate to your business, your industry. Some of it, might be unique to theirs, but you won't know unless you're having those conversations, meeting with those people, meeting with those organizations, associations. And of course, you're, like I said, back to those associations, participate through their mailing lists and the different activities that, they organize. And there's always good information there in terms of what's happening, trends and things like that. And so I always encourage people to do so.
Great, thanks. And I definitely agree. I mean, obviously participating and getting involved in your associations and committees and that is very important. And again, that knowledge sharing, and we're a knowledge sharing economy, which is especially in safety. So I agree. Just quick tip before I ask Errol, same thing. For myself, typically we like to subscribe to, publications, different types of publications. So I know this is paper and this is, passé now, but it came in the mail, so we read it. But things like looking at the different trends within construction and the way things are being built within the different sectors too, and the products that are being applied and how they're being applied. So I mean, in terms of safety, looking at those and emerging trends, a lot of different technologies being used to even just apply building products, and that. So
yeah,
John,
I was just going to say one of the other things, because in the age we live in, hashtags. Safety leadership, anything like that. And so following social media and all the hashtags, I mean, see what's kind of happening, moving, trending. I think that's really, it's certainly one of the new things that is happening now. But you just reminded me it's worthwhile for people to do.
Yeah, no, that's a good thought too. I always forget about hashtags. I use them, but never think about searching them up. So that's a good point.
And also, Thomas, just follow Colin Pooler. I mean, it's useful and entertaining.
There you go.
Yeah, it's both. It's certainly both.
There you go. Okay, we got a couple more minutes, so maybe I'll let Errol too get some comments in about how do you keep on top of the new trends and emerging trends and technologies in construction and safety.
Well, I would echo what John and Mike have said about a couple things, and being involved with the SCSA, definitely, because then you're right at the forefront of everything, and mentorship is important. We've got a safety person. That knowledge has to be, and that desire has to be passed on to the next person who's going to take that over. And all the SCSA training that is happening, and the digitalization that is happening across the world right now. And here's a few facts here. It took 13 years to reach 15 million people with commercial television. It took the internet 3 years to reach 50 million people. It took Facebook 1 year. It took Twitter less than a year. So everything is going to get to everybody much quicker than it ever did. And I'm going to show you something here, just how quickly things have changed. And that's from 35 years ago. Nothing there has anything to do with safety. And now you look at, that's me, and I'm one of those guys. That's my company. I'm in charge of these guys for safety reasons. Nobody got hurt, but we did a lot of stupid things. Now the wardrobe of the guys on site, it's full high-vis clothing, everything they have. So, and that took 35 years to get to that point in the residential industry. And because things are changing much quicker, everything is going to get better quicker because there's more technology. I think technology is going to be the drive for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I got a couple minutes left before someone pulls the plug on me here. But I want to say appreciate you guys having the discussion. I really enjoyed it, and I think we went off into some fun areas to discuss. And I think we could sit here and talk for another 2 hours about the different emerging trends and how we can react to it as an industry. But I wanted to thank you guys and maybe quickly go around and just if there's any kind of last comments you want to make in terms of what you see or what you want to maybe give to the audience in terms of looking at those emerging trends and tips and hints that you guys might have. And also, I'm also being asked if the viewers are okay to contact you after the conference, if you wanted to give a quick contact info or allow us to do that, kind of give a yay or nay, but just a quick 30-second maybe around the table. Any kind of last comments or words of wisdom you'd like to impart on our participants? We'll start with you, Errol.
I'll make it real quick. And it's your people are your most important asset. Keep them safe.
Excellent words of wisdom. Thank you. And Mike?
I would say, the work that you folks do in the field is important. It saves lives. It reduces injuries. Never forget that. On those days when you feel like everything you're doing is not working at all, it's really important that you're out there fighting the good fight. And not to be too general about this, but make it as simple as you can for people so they can just explain the why, and you'll have a lot of success. So take care, and thank you for the opportunity, SCSA.
All right, thanks, Mike. And John, if you have any last words of wisdom, we'd love to hear them.
Absolutely. Absolutely, for sure. One of the things we spoke a little bit about, but diversity and inclusion. I strongly believe an inclusive workplace is a safe workplace, and so inclusive of mental health and all those aspects. And so I encourage everyone to think about inclusion of diverse groups, marginalized groups, representation. So we're missing those perspectives in terms of safety performance. And so I think an inclusive workspace is a safe workspace.
Great, that's awesome. Well, thank you. And again, just want to thank you, John, for participating and being on the panel. It was awesome, and to you, Errol, as well, and to Mike. And some folks are asking if you'd share the Silica tool information, but seems we're out of time. I'm sure we can chat about that too, and get that after the fact, if that's okay.
Sure.
Again, want to thank the audience and the folks for organizing this, and thanks for participating in this and giving me some questions to ask and helping me lead this. I really appreciate that. I think it was a great discussion and one we could probably continue on in future panels too. So thanks again. We're going to end this so we can make it to our next sessions at 10:30. And I'm going to give it back to Kelly, throw it back to Kelly. So thanks, folks.